Alright, everybody. What did everybody watch this past weekend? We had two big events that we wanted to see. Of course, let me start off with the somewhat obvious one. Did anybody watch the Super Bowl? Super Bowl. Everybody, after all the hype, after all the build-up, everybody thought it was the old warhorse, Peyton Manning, against the young gun, Russell Wilson. And everybody thought the old gunslinger that Manning is, plus with his somewhat indecipherable codes, would be too much for the Seahawks. Well, apparently, Mr. Sherman, when he isn't talking shit, and all the other Seahawks on defense, somehow figured out that indecipherable code. From what I hear, Manning only said Omaha twice. Of course, he said Omaha 31 times in the AFC Championship. Maybe he should have gone back to saying Omaha. Maybe he decided to change it up a little bit. Instead of saying Omaha, he probably said mutual, mutual, or beef, beef, or Rosenblatt, Rosenblatt. Anything like with Omaha, if you know what I mean. Maybe that's why on the first play of the game he gave up the safety. Because, you know, he probably went, whoops, he went Rosenblatt, Rosenblatt, whoops, somebody fall on the ball. 12 seconds into the Superdome, guess what? They give the Seahawks a 2-0 lead for the Broncos' own safety. Well, it didn't get any better. As you saw how much Denver struggled. A big 43-8 smackdown by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl. And of course, you got that old thing whenever your team wins a Super Bowl. Hey, I'm going to Disney World. Can we just change it already? Like saying this. Richard Sherman, you just won the Super Bowl. What are you going to do? Hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Seneca Falls. It's the best little town in the Finger Lakes. Something like that. We got to get away from this Disney World. Because you know what? It's too expensive to go there. And I also have to feel sorry for my friend, Susie Praskowitz. Both of her teams made it to championship games this past year. St. Louis made it to the World Series, but lost to Boston, and now Denver makes it to the Super Bowl and loses to Seattle. Susie, I feel for you, hun. You know what? If you come up here for our 25-year class reunion, I'm going to give you a big hug, 'cause you deserve it. Well, how about some of those commercials there for the Super Bowl? And of course, two that have to tug at your heartstrings, won the ad meter. It always seems as though whenever Budweiser has one with the Clydesdales, it always does well. But the thing is, who doesn't love those giant beasts? The gentle giant beasts as they are. Those Clydesdales are some of the most beautiful creatures on earth. And of course, when you got a rollicking puppy dog in the commercial, it definitely tugs at your heartstrings. Well, Budweiser won the ad meter again. Budweiser always seems to put the best commercials. Why not stop this little contest that the ad companies have to do with commercials and just give it to Anheuser-Busch? They always make the best commercials, instead of some of these guys who like to go for the lowest common denominator. You know, scatological humor only goes so far. And speaking of that, don't get Ella Fitzgerald, God rest her soul, to do one of those, because she knows how to do scatological humor, if you know what I mean. Dip-a-dip-dip-dip-dip-dip. All right, enough about the mismatch. How about the sports event that everybody was watching around here? That's right. If you didn't watch what happened Saturday night in the Carrier Dome, you aren't a fan, or you aren't a fan of the orange, or you do not follow college football, college basketball. Boy, did I almost make a screw up there. Because you know what? That is what college basketball and college sports is all about. Two big teams just going at it, blow for blow, neither one giving an inch. Boy, was that a game in the dome or what? And you know what? They even took it into overtime. You know what? I started thinking this was going to be another Six in the City, like that classic game years ago between UConn and Syracuse in the Big East tournament. Well, I like to call this the one in the dome. As you know what? C.J. Fair and Jeremy Grant had career nights. And you know, because of them, because of their driving in the lane, they kept it going against Duke and their snipers. Boy, Duke was hitting those three-pointers left and right. And I'm just yelling, hey, somebody get on those shooters. And they nearly broke everybody's heart there at the end of regulation. They did that by hitting that three to send it into overtime. And it continued into overtime. And finally, it was Tyler Ennis and others making clutch free throws, something that at times Syracuse is not known for eking out a classic 91-89 victory over Mike Krzyzewski and Duke. And how about all of those fans deciding to do their bit of Krzyzewskiville? You know, those Duke fans that like to camp around Cameron Indoor Stadium waiting for Duke to play. It became Bayheimburg on those levels outside the Carrier Dome. Tents right outside the gates. Tents right outside the entrances. We ought to have a battle. Bayheimburg and Krzyzewskiville. But that was an incredible battle in the Dome. And boy, that was an almost letdown last night. Because Spare and Grant weren't on the top of their games last night. But Trevor Cooney sure was, hitting a career-high 33 points, helping Syracuse beat Notre Dame 61-55. Syracuse is up to their best record ever. Best record ever starting, that is, 22-0. And we can just keep on going, shall we? Clemson is next up in the Dome on Sunday, and we can keep this undefeated season going. Wouldn't it be something if we made it through this season unblemished and went through the tournament unblemished? It hasn't been done by any team in years. But of course, we got some games coming up. Pitt comes up down in Pitt in about a week. And of course, 3 weeks after this Classic in the Dome, it may be the Classic in Cameron. Because on the 22nd of February, we go down there. And of course, we're going to face some real crazed fans in the confines of Cameron Indoor Stadium. But what a classic. That is what college basketball is all about. Well, I do want to go from that euphoria to some dysphoria. How about this weather this year? Everybody kind of thought this might be a mild winter. Boy, were we wrong. It just seems as though storm after storm is coming across the country. And it seems as though most of January, New York was in the meat locker. Hey, if we want cold temperatures, let's go into a freezer and get some cold Coors Light. Because you know what? It was Rocky Mountain brewed to be in the meat locker or the freezer. Humans aren't, built to be in the meat locker. And how about this? We got a couple storms coming our way this week. When are you going to say, enough is enough? Don't you want to do something like maybe do what Peyton Manning did? Let's call him. But you know what? After his performance in the Super Bowl, he'll probably screw it up. Omaha! Omaha! Oh, I'm sorry. Doesn't work for Mother Nature. Hey, you know what? You don't fool Mother Nature. Peyton, you better get a better indecipherable code. And of course, now we're starting to hear a few complaints about what's going on in Sochi. It just seems as though the snowboarders can't do the slope style on the course that they had. You know, they're saying, oh, it's too steep. Well, hey, isn't that what slope style is all about? I mean, you guys pull all these tricks and everything. Plus, I gotta wonder, are you guys gonna have any children? Just seems as though whenever snowboarders do some of those tricks, they often fall, especially when they go sliding down those rails. Fall right into their groin area. No wonder why when they come down to talk to you, they're always like, well, you know, I could have done harder. You know, I just wonder if I didn't fall, I wouldn't have a voice like this. Well, they're saying the course is too steep and the officials are going to make moderations. Hey, you want to make moderations? Let's get a sport in there that some people really do care about. Of course, you know, it seems as though the Winter Olympics are just like the Summer Olympics. Pardon me. You're becoming a little too gigantic for your own good. We gotta cut down on some of these events. Hey, we should just have the sliders. 'Cause you know, if you don't do any good in one sliding sport, hey, you lose. And of course, some people ought to cut their hair when doing one event, 'cause that's what they call the bobsled. And of course, what's the skeleton all about? Can't they just call it what it really is? The stupidity? What? I mean, I know sliding down head first is a thrill, but you know, sometimes you gotta wonder why some of them have coloring books most of their lives, especially if you go crashing head first into a barrier. You know, I always thought downhill was a good one, but say that to Hermann Maier, especially years ago when he went flying there in Nagano. Well, you know what? I mean, I love the Winter Olympics anyway, so the thing is, you know what? I'll be rooting for Team USA, especially in the hockey, and especially in speed skating. Let's go, USA. And last but not least, I want to say a thoughtful goodbye and a big goodbye to Philip Seymour Hoffman. What a tragedy that was. And you know what? He left a great legacy, especially with roles like as Truman Capote. And even though it was a minor role, a great role there in Twister. Philip Seymour Hoffman represented Rochester well, and he became a great actor for our generation. It's just a crying shame how he went. Philip Seymour Hoffman, my hat's off to you. And also, two of my cousins, Annette and John McDermott, who start their retirement after 37 years running Antoninas. I'm Ken Haas, and that's my story for this week.